Do you guys remember way back when Conor McGregor was at his peak? There was a good 3.5 month period of time when everyone was convinced that the secret to fighting was hiring a movement coach. Because that's what Conor had. He had a guy that came in and taught him about movement. And Conor himself multiple times went on record to say, and all these guys are so obsessed with strength and conditioning, but they're so stiff they can't move right. Which, I think there is some truth to. There's this certain fluidity of movement athletes have when they really master their craft and have done it for many, many years that some fighters definitely didn't have. But like I said, this whole fever dream was a bit short-lived as Nate Diaz completely destroyed it by saying,
You're playing touch butt with that dork in the park, the ponytail. And I'm the one who ain't got no training partner? I don't think so. You seem to have it all figured out when you're fighting midgets.
Because let's just be honest, guys. Looking back in hindsight, it is clear as day the absolute king to combat sports is size and strength. But of course, there's a bit of a sliding scale here. How much size and strength do you need to beat an opponent way more skilled than you? How much skill do you need to beat an opponent significantly bigger and stronger than you? This is a question that has pegged the internet for a long, long time. If you've spent any amount of time scrolling through the sludge that is the MMA content on Instagram, you're going to come across those posts where it's like a picture of Gaethje looking like a nerd, or maybe even Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and then next to him is this just jacked bodybuilder, and it's like, oh, being an MMA fighter means, the guy on the left beats the guy on the right, whatever. But if you go to the comments, there's always that select amount of people who are like, oh, come on, man, what's he going to do? He's like 200 pounds heavier than him. And if you click on all these people's profiles saying that, all they do is lift. They have never trained martial arts a single day in their life. But does that mean that they're wrong? Well, here's my 2 cents on the matter. Most of the time you see these questions posed versus who would win, this skilled fighter versus this 300-pound bodybuilder. Typically, the arena the audience places this hypothetical matchup is in a street fight. Now, the only thing going for the bodybuilder in this instance is the fact that they're on concrete. That is always a little nerve-wracking, being the much smaller person. But still, the far majority of the time, the trained fighter is going to win. Going back to Conor's whole fluidity of motion argument, that's really true when it comes to a bodybuilder. These guys are so stiff, their range of motion is practically non-existent. Sure, they're huge, but can they actually generate any power with their punches? They're going to be so slow, so telegraphed, and they're only going to be able to throw like 4 or 5 punches before they are completely gasping for air, gassed out of their minds. Remember when Conor McGregor sparred the Mountain from Game of Thrones? Yeah, the Mountain wasn't actually trying to hurt Conor really, but still, he was dead about 30 seconds in. Because he just does not do cardio like that. It does not exist. But even that example is a little different, because the Mountain's not a bodybuilder, he's a strong man. He's lifting for strength, not for aesthetics. That's why the whole bodybuilder argument is kind of dumb. But Bradley Martyn versus Demetrious Johnson. See, this one's a little more interesting because Bradley Martyn, he is a bodybuilder, but he is also a freak athlete. And there is a huge difference between the two. Bradley can run, he can jump, he can dunk a basketball on an 11-foot hoop. That's a lot different than these just fully erect bodybuilders who can barely touch their toes, In a street fight on concrete, I'm very worried for DJ. If he gets picked up into the air, it's not going to end well for him. But in a sanctioned MMA fight, or what they're talking about now, which is a jiu-jitsu match on a mat, Bradley has absolutely no chance in the world. Not a shot. 1,000,000,000 to 1 odds he wins. Remember when Owen Roddy, Conor McGregor's striking coach, rolled with that bodybuilder? He got lifted into the air after he grabbed a guillotine, but he just rolled through it, held on to the neck, and was able to finish him. Or how about when Gary Tonin had that grappling match with Husamar Palhares, who was on a lot of supplements, was way bigger, and as we know, an actual very skilled jiu-jitsu practitioner who was flipping Gary Tonin throughout the air and still got completely tooled up that whole match. And forget about just grappling. Make it a striking match. Mighty Mouse versus Bradley Martyn. Mighty Mouse, he's just going to keep circling, and he's just going to keep smashing Bradley right in the calf. After 5 kicks, Bradley's not going to be able to walk. It doesn't matter that he's 120 pounds heavier. 5 kicks, the fight's already over. Not a shot. But if all this is true, then what did I mean when I said earlier that size is king? Well, obviously, the most important thing, of course, is going to be your skills. But the UFC today is so high level, guys are so close at the top. The bigger guy is going to have a huge advantage, especially if he is a grappler. Aljamain Sterling, huge for 135. Volkanovski, while being short, weight-wise, he's a decently sized 45er. Islam Makhachev, huge. Leon Edwards is arguably the only full-sized welterweight that Kamaru Usman fought. Colby, Masvidal, Gilbert Burns, all really small at 170. Usman's big advantage was how big he was. Now, Adesanya, he's a very small middleweight. When he fought Jan Blachowicz at 205 pounds, he couldn't even make 205. He weighed in at 200 pounds. But with the mixture of him being real tall and lanky, and middleweight not being the most skillful division, and him being extremely skilled makes him get away with it. We'll see what happens when he fights Hamzat. And then there's John Jones, who had to take 3 years off to bulk up for 265, because he was planning on facing Ngannou. Now, remember when Ngannou lost to Stipe the first time? It was because Stipe was way more skilled than Ngannou. But the second time they fought, it was exactly the same. Stipe was still a lot more skilled, but Ngannou had closed that gap a little bit. And then all of a sudden, he destroyed Stipe. Stipe was very undersized. Stipe and Daniel Cormier both had this thing where they were like competing to see who can be the smaller heavyweight, and I don't know why. I remember the second time they fought, Daniel cut weight at heavyweight. He cut 12 pounds when he didn't need to, purely so he could get closer to Stipe on the scale, who was weighing in at 230 pounds. But when Stipe fought a 265-pound Ngannou, he got completely ragdolled. So what am I trying to say with all this? We need a 165-pound division.